Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Barstool Baseball Show. It is Carl. It is Wednesday, and as always, I am joined by Chris Klemmer. Are you sick? Do you have COVID?
No, I do not.
Okay, some sniffles in the green room.
I just had a weird sneeze. I just got out of Pick Central. Didn't have a ton of time to get ready for this. And, between the shows, and then I was scarfing down Chipotle, and I sneezed, and a bunch of rice came out of my nose. And, it's completely, destroyed my last 10 minutes.
So, white rice or brown rice?
White rice. Although by the time it came out of my nose, it had, a different color, too. So.
Yeah. I prefer the texture of their white rice. This is the NL Central show today, mostly. We're going to do some NL Central stuff. The Cubs are playing the Brewers in a pivotal series. That's a three-team race in the National League. The three-team race in the American League is in the West. Yeah, I know you hate the Reds. It's the best race.
Oh, no, it's actually not that. It's the other way. It's, I think that race is over. But we can put it in the ground, maybe. But yes, you have something you want to talk about first.
Well, I think we have to address whether or not we gave Mookie Betts enough credit last week in the award show when we were talking about MVP. That's something now that as I pull up the player comparisons, I don't know if it became more glaring in the last week. Mookie Betts hit 440 in August with a 1,300 OPS. Is he a candidate to win Rookie of the Year? Did we completely overlook that?
MVP? Yeah. We totally did. He's actually the odds-on favorite to win as of right now. I think it's going to come head-to-head down the stretch here. But no, we didn't give him enough credit. And a lot of it is just because he's been so hot so recently. Look, Mookie Betts has had a great year all year long. I'm not saying that. But, if you pull up the stats here for the last month, look at his August splits. 446 batting average, 500 on base, and a 782 slug. So it's happening in real time. And, we did the show, obviously. We're talking about who we think is going to win, but we're also doing it in August from a different perspective. But yeah, Mookie, the other problem with Mookie Betts is, too, is he's so good and he surrounds so many good players. Honestly, you forget about him. But I definitely feel like he doesn't get the respect he deserves. Mookie Betts, we talked about it on the show on Monday morning, the panel show, and Castellan and I were both saying how Mookie Betts is. You had Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, and Mookie Betts all kind of came up around the same time, right? These generational talents, kind of like Kershaw, Verlander, and Scherzer, and Greinke. It's kind of like that, but with the hitters. When it's all said and done, Mookie Betts is going to probably have more home runs and hits than Harper, and he definitely will have more home runs and hits than Trout, whose body's failing him. So it's interesting that the guy that's probably going to be top of those leaderboards from this generation of ball players is going to be Mookie Betts.
And if we can just compare him to Acuna this season, he's got more home runs, more RBIs, a higher WAR, a higher slug, higher OPS plus. Acuna obviously leads baseball in stolen bases. He leads the National League in OBP at around 420. Runs scored around 100, 120. Tremendous. But to your point, Betts does it in such an underrated fashion. I wonder how much of this is bias too. If I was a Dodgers fan, if I lived on the West Coast, if I was really tapped into the West Coast, it's a challenge. It is a challenge at a national scale when he's playing 162 games. Half of those are 3 hours behind the East Coast.
We're talking about two Hall of Famers here. I know Acuna's 26. Look at Vada Pinson. Guys can start off great and fall off. I get all that. But we're talking about two Hall of Famers here. There's no wrong answer. If you think Acuna should win, you're right. If you think Mookie Betts should win, you're right. It's what are we doing here? But it is a fun, writers are going to have to choose, though. They're going to have to make a tough choice. I'm very interested, especially where both teams have kind of cemented where they are in the playoffs. They're not really playing for anything. I'm kind of curious to see, which of them can. If Mookie Betts obviously can stay this hot for 3 more weeks, he'll win. If Acuna can go on a run like we know he can, he'll win. So it's going to be kind of fun for these two teams that have nothing to play for, something to watch, a reason to watch Dodgers and Braves games, maybe. But Acuna, 29 home runs, 61 stolen bases. I keep saying it over and over again, but when I was a kid in the 80s, and I had Eric Davis's baseball card, and I turned it around, and I looked at those numbers, I didn't believe what I saw. Now, back in the 80s, I couldn't watch a lot of Reds games. They just weren't on TV a bunch. It was, really before, kind of the advent of cable. I'm able to watch these Acuna games, and it's kind of fun for me to see what Eric Davis would have looked like. It's awesome. It's cool for me to watch this. What does a 30-60 season look like? What does it mean when a power hitter has 70 stolen bases? What does that mean? And I'm able to see it now, and it means it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. There's a great comparison we made earlier, too. This debate has been going nuts on social. Mike Trout versus Mookie Betts in the long run. And there's a distinction to be made there where, we're not talking about who is the better player, who's the better hitter, who's had the better, first 9 years of their career. When it came up, it was about the legacy. And I think that's where Mookie's really starting to shine in these conversations on the show is we're recognizing his place in the history of the game when we go back and look at the cumulative totals, games played, hits, home runs, RBIs. We'll be up there, like you said, with Hank Aaron. And to draw this, one thing that came up just quickly, I know this is the National League show. Mike Trout just, as a comparison in the last 3 years to Mookie Betts, gets annihilated. Last 5 years, gets annihilated. Last 7 years, gets annihilated. It is not a comparison in the last 7, 5, 3 years.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, Mike Trout just can't stay on the field. His body's failing him. And and I think it's only going to get worse. He has major back issues. Now, Trout, to his credit, does everything he can to come back. But look at the way his performance is falling off this year compared to last. And you see a guy that I think he's slugging 470. He's not what he was, obviously, but not even close, where Mookie Betts is having one of the best seasons of his career. And that's sad. It sucks. But it's also just that happens in sports. And that's where, Mike Trout had one of the best 20s of any player who ever lived. We're talking Babe Ruth. There's a very small company of guys who have had better 20s than Mike Trout. But I know one thing. Mike Trout's 30s probably aren't going to be very pretty. And you look at Ken Griffey Jr., amazing 20s, and then he goes to the Reds when he turns 30 and it all kind of falls apart. That happens to some guys, and it's sad and it sucks. But Mookie Betts, at least as of right now, knock on wood, he doesn't seem to be doing that at all. And he seems to be that kind of guy that's going to be able to have these amazing seasons well into his 30s. I really wonder what it's all going to look like. He started off in Major League 21 years old, which is obviously very young. When you start off that young, you can put up some wild hit totals, some wild home run totals. You think about Eddie Murray, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. I think Mookie Betts is going to hit that.
You bring up your 30s. We're going to talk NL Central. Just something popped into my mind quick. The best 30s in the history of Major League Baseball. Does that belong to Mike Schmidt?
I would say Hank Aaron, right?
Okay.
I mean, Hank Aaron's 30s were incredible. Yeah, that's my go-to for that. Willie Mays had an amazing 30s. Mike Schmidt was very good in his 30s, but I want to say he started to tail off at the end, where I feel like, and I'm going to look it up right now, I feel like with the other two players, Aaron, Mays, they didn't have it tailing off until a little later. And they didn't play. So Mike Schmidt was amazing until 37. 38 and 39 were abysmal. So
yeah, slow start. He was a slow start. Very slow starter, not a prospect. It wasn't until he was like a junior at Ohio University, went to the College World Series. And then even when he got into the minor league system, it took him a little while to get adjusted to pro ball, get that donkey. He has tier 1 power in the history of baseball.
Oh, Mike Schmidt's probably the best third baseman who ever lived. Now, Mike Schmidt, you look at his first full season, he batted under 200. So it did take him a while, but then by the time he's 24, he figured it out. We're going to get home runs. We're going to get a slugging percentage, and he's off from there. But like I said, that 38 and 39 were not great, where Aaron and Mays were great until they were in their 40s, which is wild. And when I say great, I mean amazing numbers. So yeah, but Mike Schmidt, it's funny, when I was a kid growing up, there was no great historical third baseman. And some books, if you read who's the all-time best third baseman, they would say a guy named Pie Traynor. Now remember, I'm not that old. I'm talking about books you would read in 1988. Would say the best third baseman ever is Pie Traynor. Since then, we've been very lucky. We've had George Brett, we've had Mike Schmidt, we've had Wade Boggs. So we've had some great Adrian Beltre, we've had some great third basemen. But up until the 80s, 70s, there was never really a clear. Some people would say Eddie Matthews, but there was never really a clear great third baseman. And we've been lucky in the last 40, 45, 50 years. We have it now.
It's surprising Brooks Robinson and Ron Santo wouldn't get that consideration. Brooks Robinson
probably. I think what happened is you had some older guys that maybe didn't appreciate. And also Brooks Robinson, amazing defensively, was not the best hitter. Maybe some people valued hitting more. And Ron Santo, I remember, especially when I was a kid, people would just say his career was too short.
This is the National League show. It's Wednesday. We're going to stay on the Ron Santo theme. We're going to talk some NL Central. The Brewers and the Cubs are doing battle. You said off the top, so you think the Brewers had this all locked up. At the time of recording, they're up 5 games on the Cubs, I believe 6 games on the Reds. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They're red hot, 9 in a row, I should just say. They've got the second best record since the start of August, behind the Dodgers. The third best record is the Cubs. It should be a closer race, but the Brewers are pulling away at a time the Cubs are playing phenomenal baseball. So from an outside perspective, I have a general idea of what you believe about the Brewers, but let's just rehash this. You look at this team, you say, they can't hit, they're not very impressive, but why are they good?
Well, they can pitch. I think the NL Central died last night. Officially, we can put a close to it after the first inning. The Brewers scored 4 in the first, and that was that. And I think the Cubs needed to be in a position where they were going to sweep this series to really be able to keep it going here. We're running out of time here. We're in the fourth quarter. And, you're down 5 games to a team that's playing red hot right now. Look, if the Cubs win the next 2, people are going to hear this. If they win yesterday when people hear this and they win again, then, on Wednesday, then yeah, now we have, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know. I think it's over. And now you're a Cubs fan. Do you think this is over? Or do you think you have it? Now I say over, I mean just the division. I'm not talking about wild card. I'm just saying just the division. I feel like the Brewers ended it yesterday.
Well, when this comes out, Justin Steele will pitch at home against Corbin Burns. And Justin Steele's having a better season. He's just got his balls on the mound all over. Like, he drags his balls on the mound. So he's coming tonight.
And boom. Then Burns?
Corbin. Yeah, then Burns. He's right now.
Yeah, you take out. Oh, look, I love Justin Steele. He's so underrated. He's incredible. I got lucky enough to meet him at Pick Central. Great guy. I'm all in on Justin Steele. Corbin Burns, since May 1st, though, has been fantastic. I mean, he just had a bad April.
I like Justin Steele taking the ball tonight is the first part of my answer of saying it's not over.
Okay.
I would like them to win this series. If they get swept, it's over. If they get swept the division hunt, you're looking at 7 games in September, and the Brewers don't play the type of baseball where they would go. Like, the Brewers are not the type of team that's going to go 8-18 in September.
Right, because the pitching won't allow them to go in long losing stretches. Now, if they win today with Justin Steele, I think that's a great. I think the over/under is 6.5. By the way, in that game, which is wild. 2 great pitchers going. It's gonna be an awesome game. I'll be watching it. I love it. But let's say they win tonight. Let's say Justin Steele throws a masterpiece. Not out of the question. Are they gonna win tomorrow too? Like, they gotta win both. They can't walk out.
Absolutely. Well, but if they do go 1-2, I'm not willing to say that it's completely out. Like, really? I just wouldn't. I wouldn't be willing to say it's completely out if they go 1-2. If they steal a game, or I just wouldn't do that. But if they drop this, if they get swept, then I'm for sure saying that NL Central's cooked. It would belong to the Brewers, because the Cubs have played the best baseball that they can play. The Brewers are just so red hot. They're playing a little bit better than the best they can play. I don't even know what that is. So I would look at the playoff picture for the NL Central. We'll have a much firmer understanding of it when this series is wrapped. Then the attention for the Cubs would shift to the wild card, which in that case, you're competing to go play the Brewers in the first round of the wild card.
Really?
Sure. You've got the Phillies, you've got the Diamondbacks, you've got the Giants, you've got the Cubs, there's a host of teams that are in the mix for these wild card spots. It's 4, 5, 6. I don't think there's one clear 4 where, like, the Rays or the Orioles would be 4th in the American League.
Well, I know the Phillies are 4. So I think we can lock in some things. We can lock in the Braves. We can lock in the Dodgers. We both agree on that. I'm locking in the Brewers. I understand why you're not, but you have to at least admit they have a huge heads up. The Phillies have a 5-game lead in the wild card, and I don't see them losing that. I think the Phillies are a very talented team. I think they're going to lock in that first wild card spot. Now, for me, the battle is for these last 2. And it comes down to the Cubs, Diamondbacks, Giants, Reds, Marlins, I guess, or 2.5 back. So you got 5 teams for 2 chairs. And it gets interesting. And I think the Cubs, for me, I think the Cubs are playing fantastic baseball. I like their roster a lot. Some pitching questions with Tyon and Drew Smyly and Stroman. So that's a little bit concerning to me, but they're hitting the hell out of the ball right now. So the Diamondbacks, I thought they might be dead. They're coming back to life. And then you have the Reds, who are, I think they're not going to last. Them and the Marlins, I don't like their chances here, but I got to give the Reds credit. They are sticking around, but there was some really bad news yesterday that came out of the Reds camp, and that's Matt McClain's on the IL. And me and you both love Matt McClain.
With Matt McClain's better than Ellie De La Cruz.
Yes.
Right now.
Right now. I would buy stock in De La Cruz's career, but for this season, it's inarguable that Matt McClain has been a much better player than Ellie De La Cruz.
And probably Andrew Abbott's probably the most important player on that team because he's so much better than their other starting pitching. But Matt McClain being out certainly throws a wrench in the Reds.
And by the way, I know we talked about this a little bit. Joey Votto, by the way, is not having a good year. And I know people want him to have a good year, and I understand it's a nice story, but we have to be realistic with some of these things. Joey Votto hasn't been good in a couple of years now. He's batting .200 for this season. He's on the IL again. On base of .303, slugging .459. We talked about it before. They have an option to pick him up. I think it's a $20 million option to pick up, or a $7 million buyout. There's no way they pick up that option. There's no way you pay Joey Votto $20 million if he hasn't hit over 200 the last two seasons.
Well, they're paying him $7 anyway, so it's just a question of paying him $13 to bring him back. They're paying him $7 to buy him out, so it's $13 to bring him back. And so then the question is, would you pay Joey Votto $7 million to not be here if they make the playoffs this year or they have a run? Would you pay? Yes. Would you then turn around in the offseason? I think Reds fans will have a very hard time accepting that.
I don't care. You don't give a guy $13 million that can't hit 201. What are we doing?
What about the story about Will Benson turning his career around in a fucking charter flight with Joey Votto because they were sitting in the back and he was talking about pregame routine? That's worth a little something. And it's not just that's the only story we have. And I know you scoff at those stories, but I believe in it.
Total, and there's no real way to measure it. It's also like you're only going to hear the positive story. You never hear the story of, he gave me shitty advice and now I fucking struck out. So like I hate that shit because it's all like, and it's honestly a lot of it is the circle jerk of the media where it's like for whatever reason media used to be a lot more critical and all they do now is just suck every player off. And because of that, you're not getting the real story a lot of times. You're only getting this weird positive spin. You see it a lot with the NBA, and now it's trickling down to MLB. I don't know. Like, you know what? You're right. I don't care. Honestly, for $13 million, I really don't give a fuck.
What? So even if Joey Votto's healthy and has a good offseason, is strong as a bull, ready to go, you say no on Votto. That'll be an interesting decision for the Reds to make.
Maybe you could reach a different agreement.
What if he's a game changer down the stretch in September? What if he gets hot in September?
It's right now, Carl. It's just not gonna. That's just, I don't play in those hypotheticals. That's silly. I mean, this is not. You can't count on him. Now, what if you buy him out for $7 million and you can have him come back for $3 or something? Sure. Like, at the end of the day, if he's bought him out, he's a free agent. You can bring him back at a different rate. And Joey Votto seems like an awesome guy. Obviously, if he's good in the clubhouse, yeah. But you know what's going to happen though? You could run into a situation where it's the day before the season starts and you got to cut him. And how's that going to go in the clubhouse? It doesn't end well for these things. Like he's 39. We just talked about Mike Schmidt. I remember Mike Schmidt retired mid-season. He couldn't hit anymore. He was 39. He just couldn't do it anymore. He quit. He quit. He retired in like May of that season. You got to be careful with some of this stuff.
Those Philly fans are hard, though. He was sensitive to booze. That's a completely different conversation, though. I want to stay, so from Reds over to Brewers and Cubs. I talk about the difference in these teams because I was doing some research, getting my mind right. I sent you a text message. Let's talk about Craig Counsell for a minute. Craig Counsell's such a good manager. There's some stories of he could be leaving Milwaukee, contract, this and that. He's such an underrated manager. I sent you the list of managers he played for off the top of my head. It's like Don Baylor, Jim Leland, Davey Johnson, Buck Showalter, Ned Yost, Bob Melvin, Ken Maka, and even Bob Brenly won a World Series. I think he had a brief spell with Ron Reinke. He wasn't a great manager, but a legendary baseball figure nonetheless. And a super, super smart guy from Wisconsin who takes a ton of pride in the culture of being from Wisconsin, having a baseball team up there. The Brewers are very important to him. He worked in the front office. You're talking about, it's very rare to come across this, but if he stuck with the Brewers for his entire career, he would be he's on this path to be considered like one of the best managers of this century. I have so much respect for him, and it's within the way the Brewers play baseball. That lineup is so interchangeable. They hit behind runners. They don't strike out. They play great fucking defense. Like, every time a new pitcher comes up in their system, I shouldn't say every time, I'm getting a little hyper whatever bolic, but like, the way they develop pitchers is because of the culture that they have in that clubhouse. The way they develop the players that have success, even though they're not top, they're Calarians on an island of misfit toys. But they just figure out a fucking way, and they do it year after year after year. And when it's so hard to quantify, you just go back to the leader for me. I just look at Craig Counsell, and he must be fostering just such a great fucking environment from the day those guys show up at spring training. It's the only explanation I can have for it.
Yeah, quick Craig Counsell story. So 2001, the Diamondbacks win the World Series. He's on the team, and they all vote for team MVP. This is a team with Kurt Schilling, Randy Johnson, Luis Gonzalez. I think that was the year he had 50-something home runs. They voted for Craig Counsell, which is stupid. Craig Counsell's not the MVP. That's dumb. But it does go show you how much they respect him. And you had some guys, that's a weird clubhouse, a lot of big personalities. They said he was the MVP. And you see something like that, and you see the success that he's had. He has had, in a small market, Milwaukee, which has not really, look, it's the Brewers. 86 wins, 96 wins, 89 wins, 95 wins, 86 wins, on pace for over 90 wins this year. With a team that can't hit, but they fundamentally do everything right. That's exactly what you want in a manager. Now, the Mets are probably going to get David Stearns. I've been saying that for a while. It's been there. If David Stearns is bringing Craig Counsell with him, oh my God, I will pick him up at the airport. I will do whatever I can. Red carpet, whatever I can. I'll give him a big kiss, a big hug. I don't know what he likes. If he wants to hug a skinny man, I'll hug him. I would do whatever it took to get Craig Counsell to Queens, because he is, I don't know if there's too many managers managing right now that I respect, or kind of, I guess respect's the word, especially with Francona probably going to retire at the end of the year. Honestly, man, like, who's better than Craig Counsell? Like, really? Like, he's on my short list of, like, the best.
The only guy I would throw up there is Dave Roberts, but that's more of an experience-based thing. He's got such a great roster. Hey, the only guy I said.
I would put Counsell quite a bit above Roberts, and I like Dave Roberts a lot. Honestly, like, I think, like, Davey Martinez might be a better manager than Dave Roberts, just because, like, I respect, and it's not fair because Dave Roberts only had good teams, but I just really respect doing something with nothing more than I respect doing something with something. And honestly, Dave Roberts in the playoffs is kind of stunk. I mean, that's not always a manager, but managers get exposed in the playoffs because you have to go with the bullpen, the starting rotation changes. Like, we saw it with Aaron Boone, right? Like, he's not a good manager, but he had great teams and he was able to, but like, I don't know, man. Craig Counsell's about as good as it gets. I cannot say enough good things about Craig Counsell.
Yeah, and the lineup and the roster, I mean, the players that come in and out of this club, it's so hard that when you play the Brewers, you haven't seen them play in like 2 weeks, and you look at their lineup and you're like, who the fuck? Where did this guy come from?
The Brewers are bad. And when I say bad, I don't mean bad for playoffs. The Brewers are a bad Major League Baseball team when it comes to hitting. They are last in the National League in slugging percentage. Dead last. They're on pace for, 93 wins? 92 wins? How is that possible? How are you last in slugging percentage? And you know why? Because they hit runners over. They do everything right. They just do all the right things. And they make the most of their rare opportunities because they don't get on base because they can't fucking hit. But Craig Counsell knows you get that guy there, sack fly, move him over, do this shit. And he's got everyone on the same page. You never hear any, strife coming from Milwaukee. And then he really knows how to manage a bullpen, right? Like, he's able to build that bullpen. I don't know, man. Craig Counsell's the guy.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. They're second in runners, and they're second in hitting with runners in scoring position in the second half. I think they were 22nd in the first half. They're second in the second half. So to your point, yeah, they're just delivering when those opportunities present themselves. Bullpen management for the Brewers is interesting because last year when they traded away Hader, people were shitting on him left and right. Devin Williams has emerged. Hader's ERA is under 1 this year, and it's lights out, all that bullshit. But Devin Williams, he'll go give you 5 outs. He doesn't care when he pitches. Where Hader has to pitch 3-run leader less, has to be a safe situation, has to be the ninth inning, has to be clean. So it almost seems like in the long term, maybe not as bad of a decision because Devin Williams has embraced like a new modern closer of, okay, you have to come in and pitch atypical situations, where my understanding is Hader tends more to be like a Kimbrel and that it's known. I'm only pitching unless it's a safe situation. Don't put me out there otherwise, or else there's going to be some problems.
Yeah, plus Devin Williams is fucking awesome. He's like, he's great. Listen to these ERAs. Devin Williams, 146. Bryce Wilson, 295. Joel Payamps, 209. Elvis Peguero, 348. Hobie Milner, 218. Abner Uribe, 193. Like, everyone you bring out is great. Oh, another great Milwaukee Brewers reliever. Oh, they're bringing somebody else in. And then the rotation, like I said, we talked about Corbin Burns, who's been very good since May. Freddie Peralta is so unheralded. He's a legitimately good pitcher. Is he great? No, but he's pretty good. He's fun to watch. He strikes a ton of guys out. I don't know why people sleep on Freddie Peralta. And then Brandon Woodruff's back, and he has looked awesome. And then you got a guy like Wade Miley, who everything I hear, and this is more your speed, but everything I hear about Wade Miley is he's like the best clubhouse guy. Like, he's an awesome guy to have around. He's the veteran of that rotation. People seem to really like him. I'll say this for him. I was watching one Brewers game. He got a comeback or come back, get him in the leg. It must have hurt like a motherfucker. Stays in there. Like, he's just, Wade Miley is, I think, just a great guy to have around. And the Brewers have had some injuries. Julio Teheran is hurt. Adrian Howes is on the IL. Colin Ray they sent down. Like, they've had some guys move around, but what does Craig Counsell do? Next man up. Another great pitcher. Or I shouldn't say great. Very good. It's very good, very good, very good, very good. And now they're on pace for 92 wins.
There's got to be something with their pitching development. There has to be something we don't know about. So many of these are homegrown, plucked from the scrap heap, as Castellani loves to say, from nowhere. And then once you kind of get into their organizations, Brandon Woodruff was Corbin Burns before he was Corbin Burns. He's taking the ball game 3 against the Cubs. It's so easy to forget about it. But as you rattle off the depth, Hauser's hurt, whatever, Ray got sent down. I thought I heard Aaron Ashby's name. Julio Teheran has been. These are
Ashby's been out all year.
Pitchers. Yeah.
Ashby's been hurt all year. They don't miss a beat. The Mets, on the flip side, we was, it's not comparable. Like, we was Verlander for a month or whatever, or like Diaz gets hurt. And Diaz obviously is great. But like all Mets do, including myself, we just cry about Diaz being gone. Well, the Brewers had a guy out for the whole year. It's important to them. They don't sit around and cry. They have next man up. They have, it's all about organizational development. We talk about this all the time in the show. And I really wonder how the Brewers manage their minor leagues in the bullpens in the minor leagues, because I feel like every bullpen option they have is so strong. I wonder if they're doing a lot of great work, coaching, analytics. I don't know. That to get their guys ready to go for when they get called up to become major players in that bullpen. Because man, oh man, does the Brewers and David Stearns know how to put together a bullpen. And man, oh man, does Craig Counsell know how to manage.
Yeah, there's a tangential story about the Rays that comes around somebody from minor leagues or something that's in the network. I heard the story. They go out to get their fucking shit rocked in AA. Like game started or relief, whatever. It was just an appearance in AA. The guy gets his absolute shit rocked. And he'd been struggling for a couple of appearances, and somebody from the Rays front office, player development, wanted to talk to him after the game, and he was like, I think I'm cooked. I think they're going to make me pack my bags. And he was like, hey, I want to talk to you. Let's look at your spin rate. I know you gave up 8, whatever, how many runs. This is the most spin rate you've had in the last 6 starts. This is the best your pitches have looked. It was super positive. Like, focus in on, this as much as you can control. And the feeling of that was like, I thought I was going to get sent home, and instead they're there picking me up and encouraging me with the information that they have. I would imagine the Brewers trend towards that. They have to have some sort of like core philosophy as a player that impacts the way you feel about yourself. Because every guy out there is throwing gas. Everybody has nasty stuff. There's not a bad pitcher in the big leagues. It just comes down to execution. And so what you're seeing here is at the most critical time of the season, when it's time to turn it on, the Brewers are just dumping guy after guy out there, nameless in a sense, that consistently execute. I have to get to the bottom of this. If you're a Brewers fan or you've got inside information about like what that pitching development system looks like, I would love to know. The last thing I have on the Brewers, just generally as a team, is I know small market, we want to see owners spend more. They've got issues going on with the stadium because the stadium's owned by the state of Wisconsin. They lease it back to the Brewers. Something with like state politics where they're playing hardball on repairs and the stadium's 22 years old. So there's some like funky stuff going on. I don't know how real it is at the sense of like they could leave Milwaukee. I think there's more like political stuff. But my general takeaway when I look at the Brewers is they're doing it so differently. Sure, there's constraints in the budget. But once you get to spring training and you have a roster, I do like the way that they play baseball. I like an emphasis on pitching. I like an emphasis on organizational guys and culture. I like what Counsell's built. Like they should be significantly more respected than they are in the national media. Ultimately, what holds them back is, for as good as they are, do you think they can win the World Series this year? I mean, honestly,
no, of course not. But here's a few things. First off, fuck the ownership here. Mark, was it Atasnio? I'm not pronouncing his name right. Sorry. Whoever he is, Mark A., fuck you for a second. You know, all these cities, remember, in the 90s, early 2000s, I want the city to pay for the stadium. City pays, it's all a fucking scam. The city pays for the stadium, and then you hold them by the balls until they give you, when the lease is up, I'm just gonna move then, fuck you. It was all a weird extortion thing to fuck around with cities. Meanwhile, it's tax dollars that could go to a number of different things, schools, what have you, road repairs, things, infrastructure in, helping elderly people. But instead, the Brewers who, all these major league teams are making money hand over fist. But they're gonna, and we see this with John Angelos in Baltimore, they're gonna just keep trying to, run the city into the ground. Where meanwhile, it's exactly what they asked for. Well, if you don't give us a stadium, we're gonna move. Oh, you give us a stadium? Well, we're still gonna move. Unless you give us this deal. It's like, fuck you. B, spend some fucking money. It's ridiculous. You asked me a question, can the Brewers win the World Series? The answer is no. I mean, most likely. I mean, anything can happen, obviously. They get in the dance, but the Dodgers and Braves are so far ahead of them. If they had spent some fucking money and gotten a real lineup instead of this weird patchwork shit that Craig Counsell has to act like Harry Houdini out there just to get a fucking 3 runs in, yeah, then maybe you would be a team I would consider to be a real World Series contender. But you're not. Because you're cheap, and fuck you for trying to really hold Milwaukee, which has been a very loyal city. Meanwhile, keep in mind, the Brewers have never won a World Series. They've only been to one their entire existence. And their whole existence is shady, too. They're, Bud Selig moving, they were in Seattle for a year. I'm not going to go back and re-go just like that. But the fact is, this team has, runs like it's the Poors, when if they just ran a little bit, spent a little bit more money on players, and had a better situation with the city, this would be a much more applaudable feat by Mark A. So no, I'm not happy with the ownership here. It's bullshit. And they should be kind of held to the fire a little bit on that one. But luckily, Mark A does hire very intelligent people like David Stearns and Craig Counsell. That's why they are where they are. Can they win a World Series? No. They can't fucking hit. But their pitching might keep them in games. Like, as it stands right now, Carl, what? They would be the 3rd seed, right? There. So they would play right now, the Diamondbacks, I think the Brewers could beat the Diamondbacks in a 3-game series. Sure. Then they got to play the Dodgers and Braves, and they'll get their nuts ripped off. Is that fair?
And when they get their nuts ripped off, I think it'll be more to like the 5-1 fashion. The 6-2 games that aren't really even remotely close, but
or
maybe they hang. It's like the game gets broken in the 5th inning. That's what I look at.
This won't be a particularly fun team to watch in the playoffs. Like, the Brewers aren't really fun to watch. They do all the little things right. But they're not like, it's not like, I'll watch this game I'm excited for. We got Justin Steele and Corbin Burns. I am. But I can count on like one hand how many times I've been like that excited to watch the Brewers. I mean, that's just speaking real.
I want to spend just a couple minutes on the Cubs in contrast to that, because they are night and day situations. There ain't no repairs that need to be done at Wrigley. Our owner's willing to spend whatever money now that it's in the bag. It's a great culture, great vibe to be around the team. The Cubs they're missing one player, one pitcher, one something where I would feel like they're over a hump. And I know the gap between the Dodgers and the Braves and the Cubs is so substantial, so that's definitely impacted me when I look at the Cubs team. Of course, I want to see them go out and win all this. But as a sensible baseball fan, it's been challenging because they don't have what it takes to win. And it's not to say that they're a bad organization or they're like in puberty. I think in a year from now they're going to be gorgeous. I think the future for the Cubs is amazing with what Pete Crow Armstrong looks to be.
Mm-hmm.
Rumors about how much they're going to increase the budget this offseason. There's plenty of stuff to like about where they're going, and the prospect farm system's amazing. Jed Hoyer's been there for a very long time. You have to have a sense that it's going to click. If you ask me right now, we're recording this August 29th. They're down 5 games in the NL Central. I think their odds are 18th, 19th to win the World Series. It's a really hard club to have confidence in to make the moments that make you love the team. Like this is I'm doing a bad job of just saying I don't have confidence that at the end of the day they have enough. And so if I want to get worked up now that Drew Smyly gets his fucking tits lit in relief and that Jameson Taillon strides too long and his fastball's wet and sloppy and sliding all over the middle of the fucking barrel, like there's a lot of things there. You just look at so many problems, so many things would have to go perfectly over a very long period of time. And I think it would be fool's gold. And that's a pure baseball guy inside of me, and it kills me as a Cubs fan because they have been fucking awesome for the last couple of weeks, and it's been great to watch great baseball. They just don't have it.
Yeah, you need to chill the fuck out. So, 2016 broke your brains because you guys, Cubs fans, now know what it means to be a World Series winner, and you guys understand how hard that is and how talented that team was, and how it's 2015 you guys were awesome and didn't get there. Cubs fans know because of 15, 16, and 17 what it means to be a winner. Where this team, yeah, they're not going to win the World Series, but man, I think this year, the year before it all maybe gets good, or when the beginning starts to get. This is almost my favorite time to be a sports fan because it's all fool's gold now. Anything now is just it's all, that's not the right word. House money is a better word. Excuse me. It's all all right, we already won. The Cubs are 7 games over 500. You're playing meaningful games in September. You have a great game to look forward to tonight. Every game from now until the end of the season is going to probably mean something, be exciting, awesome to watch. You're seeing some young guys mature in front of you. That is awesome. Yes, the end result's probably going to be, even when you guys lose the playoffs, it's still you know what? We had a huge, huge improvement. We're seeing some of the stars come together. Yes, you got to worry about Clay Bellinger leaving, but this is the kind of season that gives an owner confidence to spend more money. It gives fans confidence that you guys are going the right direction. It gives the front office confidence that they're making the right decisions. This is what being a sports fan is all, obviously winning championships, but I think the year when things go good is the funnest time. You guys need to shut off the 2016 part of your brain and just need to bask in it because this is fun.
There's so much connectivity between that 2016 team core and where the Cubs are at now and the weaknesses that they've gone through and the pain and the struggle. And the pain and the struggle is no farm system, no capacity to invest in free agents. You go a number of years where the only position player you sign in the offseason is Daniel Descalso. So there's a fucking logjam all over the farm system. There's really no spot to improve any of the people that you have in this roster. And then one day it's all gone and you have to rebuild it. And they fucking get into COVID, and turns out Tom Ricketts is financing the payroll and everything through game day concessions, and there's no crossover in his wealth. So all the money that's being run from the Cubs and made from the Cubs is getting put back into the Cubs. And during the COVID season, they just bluntly said, this is going to put a huge impact on how we spend, and it did for 18 months. Then they go on, they get Dansby Swanson, and instantly it's okay, over that contract, there's going to be a good window where they can compete every single year for the NL Central. Whenever that window starts. Ian Happ's turned out to be a fine ball player. They go out and they get Seiya Suzuki. Nico Horner's a good first-round draft pick. So there's plenty of stuff to be positive about, and I am very positive about the future and the outlook of the Cubs with the guys that are coming. I think it has been a challenge this year. I think part of it, too, is with how well that they've played in their 5 games back. And you just can't get a sense of when the fact that they've scored the most runs in the second half of baseball. And the Milwaukee Brewers, who have objectively over the cumulative portion of the season, had one of the worst offenses in baseball. And the Cubs they lose ground in this time period. They've lost ground while being the third best team in baseball. So it's just so utterly frustrating. Utterly
frustrating. I think if you look at it from it's easy for me to say because I don't have an emotional tie to it. Like, you're a Cubs fan, so you're obviously, you're living and dying with each pitch. The Cubs, Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks have both been, Steele's been great. Hendricks been good. After that, it gets pretty ugly pretty quick. Like, the Cubs are battling for this wild card spot because they're not a complete team. Now, the good news for the Cubs is a bunch of starting pitchers coming in the free agent market this year. I think you can improve your team that way. Stroman, in theory, be healthy next year. That's an improvement. I don't know. I really, and the fact the Cardinals kind of disintegrated this year, like, they have some real questions about their long term. I don't know, man. Like, if I could buy stock in a team, winning a division 3 of the next 5 years, I think you could do a lot worse than putting some money on the Cubs. I think the Cubs' future is so bright. I'm shocked you're not, and you've been pretty cautious all season. I'm surprised you're not just all like, this is the funnest thing in the world. You got these young guys out there battling every day, and you get to. I'm jealous, man. My Mets are fucking cooked. It's like, you get to have fun all month. I'm just praying for Jet season to start sometimes.
Christian Yelich took the third pitch, 410 feet, the opposite field last night. It was 4-0 after 6 minutes.
Yeah,
but it's over. It's not a lack of a want or will, or maybe it's too much reality too. Maybe it's too much of this, like, national shit, sitting around talking about the 29 other teams that get in my head when I want to talk about the Cubs and get all fired up and jacked up, because we're sitting here talking about the rest of the league making this a national show. I have personally, at the start of this year, did not want to push Barstool baseball into, like, oh, that's that crazy Cubs fan who just talks about the Cubs and is super homered and biased about the Cubs. Like, it's a very big thing in my head working on this project to be objective and give good credit to where it should go. And, like, the stuff I'm saying about the Brewers, like, fuck, we're having this. It's hard as a Cubs fan to make these concessions about the team you're competing against for the championship, but as an objective baseball guy, I do respect what Craig Counsell's done. I do find the Brewers interesting, the way they pitch, and they're unique. But as a pure Cubs fan, like, brother, I want fucking smash them 15-0 tonight, send them back on the bus ride on Wednesday, crying their fucking eyes out. I just have to figure out where that line is. It's definitely a surprising season. To say that, it's definitely a surprising season.
It's been from afar, I think this has been a fantastic year for the Cubs. They've shown huge improvements in the areas I wanted them to improve. As someone who has I don't like or hate the Cubs, I'm ambivalent, right down the middle. And, like, I think they've done a ton, and they've showed me a lot. They've showed that, like, a guy like Chris Morel can come up and be a major player. It's showing me David Ross can manage a winning baseball team, which is interesting. It's like, all right, how are you going to do when, the stakes are a little higher? And so far, he's been doing pretty fucking well. And if you told me on March 15th the Cubs are going to end this season with a playoff spot, I'd be like, fuck, that is a really successful season for that team. They should be thrilled with themselves. And we're in a situation at least where they're in the hunt. I think this year has been nothing but a success for the Cubs and the Reds. The Reds also, with some of the young players they brought up. And I know I've been kind of shitting the Reds pitching staff, but at the end of the day, they're a game and a half out of the wild card. And on a team that no one expected, including myself, to, they were going to lose 90 games no matter what. They've exceeded expectations. So it's kind of cool having the Cardinals, like, not a factor this year and having some other teams kind of rise up. Because it's what's been fun about this baseball season. Even my Mets, obviously, they're DOA, but it's cool to see some of the other teams kind of rise up. Like the Marlins have played better. The Diamondbacks in the West have played better because the Padres have fallen off. So I don't know. I think the Cubs are right there with those young teams that are playing well. And if you're right about them spending more money this year in the offseason, look out.
Yeah, there's tons of money in the budget that comes up. All great points, great sentiment. Thank you for doing the Cubs segment with me too. There's a spot here to get goofy as the season closes. I have the lucky shirts. I've got the habits and the routines and the weird stuff to bring the voodoo culture out. Like, I know how to tap into my Pedro Serranoism to make sure that the Cubs can get the most out of the rest of the season. I just, like, one kind of, like, I guess closing or parting thing I'm thinking about as you're saying this is the playoff format to increase 6 teams is really been beneficial to the fans, almost as much as the pitch clock and the rule changes, because as you come down to the season, when you say there's 5 teams competing for these last 2 spots, and we are already including some really good teams in the playoff picture, you're creating an amazing 3-4 weeks. If it's the middle of September and you've got the same 5 teams staring at the last 2 spots in the National League, we're in such a good spot as a sport. That's fucking awesome.
85% of me agrees with you. There is the 15% of me that grew up when there were only 4 teams made the playoffs. When you had that, you had the best teams win the World Series more often than not. And I feel like when we keep expanding this, we're starting to see a dilution of what it means to be a World Series winner or a World Series, a pennant winner. Like the Phillies, obviously in 1992 would have been, winning 86 games wouldn't have been able to sniff anywhere close to the playoffs. And the fact they went to the World Series, there is a part of me, it's a small part, but there is a historian in me. It's like, is this great for the history of baseball? Is this great for the legitimacy of winning a World Series title? Now, the other side, you could say, oh, well, you got to earn it to win it. You got to fight through the playoffs and then get there. And like you say, it's great for these other markets. I mean, the Marlins are 1 game over 500 and they're very much in the race. So it's kind of cool these teams can stay alive longer, but it does. I don't know. I guess I'm talking about both sides of the mouth.
No, it waters it down. It waters down from what you grew up loving, where it was a longer testament. The English Premier League doesn't even have playoffs. They just have the 1 9-month regular season. They crown champions, which, for baseball, maybe that's not a bad. I mean, I want the playoffs. I'm saying that like a good metric of who's the champion and played 162 games for 6 months. I see all of it. I liked when first half winners got a playoff spot.
Oh, I don't like that. That would infuriate. Yeah. Like the 1981 stuff, like I look back, I get so mad looking at it. Like this, and then the Reds had the best record in the National League that year, didn't even make the playoffs. It's so, I hate that shit. That shit drives me crazy.
So we're better off now than we were in 81.
Yes.
This is Barstool baseball.
Music-wise was better, but baseball-wise, yes. Some good stuff in the early 80s. Just saying.
What is that supposed to mean?
I like music in the 80s. Music in the 80s were the best decade for pop music, I think. That's me.
Pop, is that your number 1 genre?
No. I guess 90s alternative for me. Graduated high school in 97, so I'm definitely a grunge kid. But 80s.
Sorry about.
It's great.
Sorry about Nirvana breaking up.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Thank you. I was a Pearl Jam guy more than Nirvana guy, but yes, it was a sad.
I just don't.
When he died, I was crushing.
That was a hard time for a lot of guys your age. I know my older brother was a Nirvana guy, and him and all his friends were sad for a long time about that. Alternative, great music. Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins.
Let's go.
Rage Against the Machine.
That's my soundtrack. In high school, man. That's me. Teenage walking out.
All right, you guys can find Klemmer in a mosh pit. This is Barstool Baseball. This is the Wednesday National League show. Subscribe on YouTube. We'll be back on Friday with another edition of Roster Wars. I need to get better with the Cubs.
Enjoying it. It's fun. It doesn't happen all the time. And
you see it on my face. I haven't. Yeah.
Have fun. This is a great thing. Every single game matters. When you go home from work, every fucking game matters to the Cubs. And that is why we're baseball fans. That is fun. That is exciting. Man, I go to the Mets games now. It's like going to a fucking morgue, man. It sucks. It was like, oh, why are we here? This sucks. It's sad energy. Every game from now until October matters to the Cubs. That's awesome. That's why we're sports fans.
Well said. We'll see you guys next time.